Let's be clear. Almost every country in Africa is named by Europeans, not by Africans. And that's not by accident. That's by design. Colonization didn't just steal land. It renamed entire nations to erase identity, history, and spiritual power. Let's break it down step by step with full clarity and receipts. 1. The names you know are not the names our ancestors used. Every African land had indigenous names, names tied to tribes, language, rivers, ancestors, and nature. But when colonizers came, they renamed kingdoms, drew fake borders, created new countries on paper, then forced people to identify with labels they made up. 2. Most country names come from European languages, English, French, Portuguese, German, European explorers and kings, slave trade references, colonial geography books. Let's go over some examples. 3. Examples of colonizer-named African countries. Nigeria, named by British colonizer Flora Shaw, mistress of Lord Lugard, derived from the Niger River, which the locals never called Niger. Nigeria literally means land around the Niger, an artificial name with no tribal meaning. In South Africa, name for its geographic location, not its people. No tribal name, no ancestral link, just a colonial compass term. Before that, it was Khoisan and Zulu territory. Sierra Leone, named by the Portuguese, Sierra Leone, and Lion Mountains. Local people never used that name. Colonizers named it based on what it looked like from the sea, not what it meant to the people who lived there. Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, named for the ivory stolen from elephants and shipped to Europe, a country named after colonial theft. Imagine your home being named after what was stolen from it. Ghana. Modern Ghana is not where the original Ghana Empire was. Colonizers gave the name back as a symbolic gesture, but it's not the original region. Cameroon comes from the Portuguese word Rio dos Camarões, meaning river of prawns, named after seafood, not the people. 4. Even the concept of a country is colonial before colonization. Africa had kingdoms, clans, tribes, nations, and city-states, not countries. Borders were defined by language, trade, marriage, and bloodlines, not by maps drawn in Europe. In 1884, at the Berlin Conference, European powers sat around a table and chopped up Africa like a pizza without a single African present. Most Africans don't speak their native tongue. Ask most African citizens what language they speak fluently. Nigeria, English Senegal, French Ivory Coast, French South Africa, English and Afrikaans. Kenya, English DRC, French Gambia, English Mozambique. Portuguese Tanzania, English and Swahili Burkina Faso, French Mali, French Angola. Portuguese languages of their colonizers, not their own. So how is it that the God who saved them somehow didn't save their language, land, culture, or names? 5. The same colonizer who gave you Jesus took everything else. Let's be real. They gave you Jesus during slavery, took your land through force. Yours renamed your borders on paper. Europe gave you a flag, language, and constitution. And now you're preaching in English and French that Jesus loves you? The same colonizer who gave you the Bible didn't think you were human. He gave you religion instead of freedom. Step 6. Africans are worshiping in the language of their enslavers. Think about it. You're calling on God, a Germanic word. You're praising Jesus, a Roman rebranding. You're reading from a Bible written in English or French, not your tribal tongue. And you're preaching sermons in the language of the very people who enslaved and colonized your land. But you still say, Jesus saved me. Saved you from what? Because he didn't save your language, land, identity, culture, history, family name, spiritual connection. Everything that made you you was stripped, and you were handed Jesus instead. Step 7. Most Africans are spiritually colonized and don't realize it. Ask yourself, why do you pray in English or French, not your ancestors' language? Why do you quote a Bible given to you by your enslaver? Why is your church structure modeled after European cathedrals? Why are you preaching about Jesus instead of invoking your own ancestors? Because colonization didn't just take your land, it reprogrammed your soul. You're preaching about love in the same language used to break your people and calling it salvation. Step 8. They don't build schools, they build churches. Let's get deeper. In many African villages, the first thing they build is a church, not a school. Why? Because a church programs your spirit, but a school could teach you who you are. They want you to pray for freedom, not study how to reclaim it. That's why they say, God is knowledge, but still tell you not to question the Bible. Because a truly educated, decolonized African is ungovernable. Step 9. Egypt is a colonized name. The proof is everywhere. The word Egypt is Greek. It comes from Aegyptos, a mispronunciation of Hotkapta, which means house of the spirit of Ptah. The real name of the land is Kemet, meaning black land, referring to both the soil and the people. The Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and later Christians all renamed Kemet and rebranded African spiritual science as mythology. The word Africa is not indigenous. The name Africa comes from the Romans, not from any African civilization. It's believed to be derived from Afri, a Latin term the Romans used to describe a tribe near Carthage, modern-day Tunisia. Later, they added Saye to mean land of the Afri, and that's how you got Africa. But here's the thing. The people of Kemet, Egypt, Kush, Sudan, Nubia, Mali, Ghana, Songhai, and Benin never called the land Africa. This is like someone breaking into your house, naming it after themselves, and then teaching your children to be proud of that name. Step 10. The original names were erased. Before Africa, there were real names for this land, Alkebulan, one of the oldest known names, used in ancient Kemet and by Moors. It means Mother of Mankind, or Garden of Eden. Taseti, Old Nubian name Kemet, meaning black land, referring to both the soil and the people. Ethiopia, originally referred to the entire region of burnt-faced people, not just the modern nation, but through conquest, slavery, and colonization, all of that was stripped away. Now you call your home Africa, the name given by your oppressor, and then say, Jesus saved Africa. Step 11. The oldest human remains, Lucy and Ardi, were found in Ethiopia, East Africa. DNA evidence traces every human on Earth back to a black woman from Africa. They call her mitochondrial Eve. So if the first humans came from Africa, and the Bible starts with the first humans in Eden, what land do you think they were describing before it was renamed and rewritten? Africa is Eden. They just colonized your map, then colonized your mind. Even the Bible hints at it. Genesis 2:10-13 describes Eden as a land with 4 rivers, including the Gihon, which flows around Kush, ancient Ethiopia, Sudan. Kush, Nubian Black Empire. The rivers line up with real rivers in East Africa. They just didn't want you to connect the dots, because if you knew Eden was Africa, you'd know that God walked among black people first. So what did they do? They flipped the script. They told you Africa was cursed. Said Ham's children, black people, were destined to be slaves. Gave you a white Jesus. Yes, called your ancestors pagans. Renamed Alkebulan to Africa. Taught you to pray away from your roots. Built churches instead of schools. Rewrote history to make you think you're less than, when in truth you are the origin of all life. They stole your land, then your identity, then your divinity. You were never a slave. You were the god of the land before colonization. You were builders of pyramids, masters of astronomy, keepers of ancestral wisdom. You had spiritual systems older than the Bible. You honored the dead, communed with nature, and understood energy, vibration, and balance. You didn't pray to a sky god. You embodied the divine. Then they came, beat your knowledge out of you, gave you a cross, made you kneel, and told you you were a slave. But you were never a slave. You were a god on stolen land. Final thought. You say, Jesus saved Africa. But Africa isn't even the real name of the land. Your continent is colonized. Your country is renamed. Your language is foreign. Your religion is imported. Your God was given to you during slavery. And now you preach in the tongue of your oppressor, worshiping a deity your ancestors never called on. That's not salvation. That's mental captivity dressed in holiness. They erased your land, renamed your identity, replaced your spirit, and gave you a book to keep you obedient. You don't need saving. You need remembering of who you were before the chains, before the church, before the name Africa. Because once you remember that, you'll stop bowing to the system that stole you.